Today's episode, Kadarius Toney is practicing. North Carolina falls to Clemson, and Booger McFarland joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with the Phoenix Suns beating Milwaukee last night in Phoenix. The Bucks played without Damian Lillard and Brook Lopez. They lost Chris Middleton to a sprained ankle in the first quarter. Doc Rivers is now 1-4 as Milwaukee's coach, but Giannis Antetokounmpo says he feels the Bucks are making progress. Wilbon, you were at the game. Do you?
Yeah. Yes, Tony, because defensively, they were able to hold Phoenix a little bit, even without their two best defensive players, one would argue, and I would argue that. They wind up, and I'm talking about Middleton, who gets hurt in that game. Yeah, they're getting better, Tony. They held Phoenix about, 3 or 4 points lower than the Suns normally score. The Suns didn't have a prolific night, but maybe that was because of Milwaukee's defense. Tony, the players on that team admit quietly, they're not going to say it publicly, that the reason they had to make that coaching change from Adrian Griffin being fired to Doc Rivers is that defensively they were a mess. Tony, they were broken. And so to build it back up, 1-4 is not totally unexpected. But their mood is really good. I know because I was able to talk to guys before the game, and their mood is really good about what they're doing, what they are learning, the direction they're going defensively, and they know that to be a threat to Boston and maybe even the Knicks in the Eastern Conference playoffs, defensively they had to remake the team. They were broken. They're doing that. There's a process, and it doesn't yield a lot of wins early.
Yeah, so, I've used this analogy before. I will use it again. When James Harden went to the Clippers, they lost about 5 or 6 in a row because it's hard to integrate James Harden with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Right now, they're the hottest team in the NBA. Have these numbers, you'll love them. They've only lost 5 games since December 2nd. They're 26-5 in that period of time. Now, I think that this is what's going to happen with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think that after the All-Star break, the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be a growth stock. Firing a coach early or middle of the season is a traumatizing event for a team. And bringing in a guy whose voice you've never heard. They don't know Doc Rivers. He never coached them. So it takes some time for them to hear and understand Doc Rivers' voice. It takes some time for Doc to appreciate who he can count on and who he can't count on. To me, Mike, that learning curve is about 2 to 3 weeks or 8 to 10 games. So I don't panic at 1-4. I don't.
Tony, I agree completely with you. And the optimism that I sensed in talking to the Bucks players it was noticeable. Like when I walked out of the room, I was like, wow, they really believe. Now, things have to happen, but they believe in what's going on there. By the way, the Suns are in a similar situation, Tony. I think they're now 16-6 since being 13-12. The Suns and the Bucks are late bloomers in this season, necessarily, it seems. We'll see where it goes. We're going to move to pro football in Super Bowl week now, and a decision Andy Reid faces in Las Vegas. Receiver Kadarius Toney has had a season full of drops and miscues and hasn't played since week 15. Officially, they say it's because he's been injured. But Toney has been practicing this week. He played a significant role late in last year's Super Bowl win with a touchdown catch and a long punt return. So, should Andy Reid take the risk and play Toney? Tony?
Yeah, so he's missed the last 6 games, reportedly with injury, but I think I read that he may have gone on social media and said he wasn't really injured. I don't know the truth of that. They're 5-1 in those games, Mike, and 2 of them are road playoff games. So it doesn't appear that they have needed him. Patrick Mahomes has been great without him. He has a history this year of dropping passes. He had that one really bad penalty that negated a touchdown against Buffalo. So again, it looks like if you don't want to play him, you don't have to play him. Andy Reid has been asked about that. Is Andy Reid going to play him? Andy Reid's exact quote, if I have this right, is, quote, "We'll see how it goes." That doesn't sound like we're thrilled to have Toney back. That doesn't sound like watch us now when he gets on the field. Doesn't sound anything like that. I think you have to trust Andy Reid in this, Mike. And I think if I was Andy Reid, I would go to Patrick Mahomes privately and I would say, do you want this guy back on the field? And I would take my cue from the way Patrick Mahomes answered me.
Among other things, Tony, I agree with that. Look, you and I have known a lot of coaches and some great ones. I'm gonna narrow this down. You've been close to one of the great coaches of all time in all sports, Larry Brown. And you know from your relationship with Larry, there's days he would tell you I'm going to play a hunch. I'm going to play this guy. And you say, Larry, you haven't played him in 2 weeks. Why are you going to play him now? Because, a practice and a hunch and the guys on the bench. And
yeah.
Just what great coaching includes instinctive decision making. Andy Reid could wake up and say, I'm not touching this guy. He's radioactive. Or, you know what? I think Tony's going to give us 3 or 4 big plays today. And that's why you trust Andy Reid, who will gather intel, because great coaches do. They listen, and not just in a State Farm commercial in their office. Andy Reid will gather intel from his senior people, and he'll make a decision, and I will be comfortable with that.
Yeah, me too. I just don't notice any clamor. I don't hear people beating the drum saying we got to have this, because they're 5-1 since he hasn't played. We move now to college basketball, where last night, number 3 North Carolina was upset at home by Clemson. Clemson is now 2-60 all-time in Chapel Hill. And South Carolina won its 20th game of the season for the first time in 7 years. They are ranked for the first time in 7 years. South Carolina ranked number 15. Wilbon, which is more significant, North Carolina's loss or South Carolina's win?
Tony, look, in the landscape and the culture of college basketball on the men's side now, I don't know that anything is significant until we get to like bubble week, and we're not there yet. And Carolina's not going to be on that bubble. Clemson probably is. Clemson's had some real close games and a couple of tough losses. A few of the men's games I've watched included Clemson. So I'm going to say Carolina losing, although, Tony, those emotional battles with Duke is not the first time that Duke and North Carolina have had these battles, and they both are limping around for a couple of games afterward. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's shocking, because it isn't. But Carolina losing at home, and they've been really good in their ranking of being, in the top 5 and whatever it is now, 2 or 3, I guess it's 3. I'm going to say Carolina, but none of this to me is like deal breaking. None of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to be brief on North Carolina because you and I disagree. I think that has no significance whatsoever. Ranked teams have lost to unranked teams all year, most of the time on the road, but sometimes at home. And to your point, they just beat Duke. That is a big deal. They understandably had a letdown. This is something Hubert Davis has to talk about. It is not insurmountable. The larger story is South Carolina, which has been irrelevant for years in basketball, is ranked and has 20 wins. They beat Tennessee at Tennessee when Tennessee was number 5.
Good win.
They beat Kentucky when Kentucky was number 6. They've been 7 years ago. They went to the tournament, had a very good run under Frank Martin, I believe. But that's the only time, Mike, in like the last 18 years that they've been in the tournament. They have been irrelevant. So if they're pretty good, I sort of think that has more significance than North Carolina just
football school
dropping a game that you'd understand.
Football school on the men's side, not on Dawn's side, but on the men's side, football school. I'm like, South Carolina,
Let's take a break. Coming up, Niners defenders say they need to give better effort than they showed against the Lions. We're going to ask Booger McFarland what he sees on the tape.
We'll also ask him what Steve Spags of the Chiefs does differently than other defensive coordinators. In Spags,
let me tell you
trust,
this: the new coach at South Carolina, Lamont Paris, went 27-8 at UT Chattanooga. His top 3 scorers are the transfer portal, because that's college basketball now. To lend us some Super Bowl insight, let's bring in a man who won 2 of them, our great friend Booger McFarland, who today is wearing a shirt from his local club in Tampa, Avalon. We'll start with this, Booger. 49ers defenders say that after watching the tape of themselves in the Lions game, they need to give better effort. How did their effort look to you?
Exactly how it looked to them, Tony. It was terrible. I mean, there's a play where Jahmyr Gibbs is running in for a touchdown, and Chase Young is jogging to the play, and he almost stopped and started walking. I mean, this is inexcusable when you're in the NFC Championship game, 1 game from the Super Bowl, and we got to coach up effort. I know those meeting rooms were probably very feisty this week. Defensive coordinator Steve Wilks probably had a tongue lashing for his defense, because we can coach a lot of things in the National Football League. We can coach X's and O's. We can coach stand start. But the one thing you shouldn't have to coach from professional guys, especially on this level in this point in the postseason, is effort. The 49ers' effort has to get better. And quite frankly, guys, it was embarrassing.
Wow. Well, let's stay with defense, but talk about the other team's defense for a second, Booger. Steve Spagnuolo gets a lot of credit for his improving the Chiefs' defense. What are some of the things that he does differently, if at all, to you to get that improvement out of that unit?
He's a selfless coordinator, Mike, and it's not all about him. You get some of these defensive coordinators, it's about their scheme. You think about your old Chicago Bears, Buddy Ryan, in the 46. It was about the scheme. Well, with Steve Spagnuolo, it's about the players. I'm going to put the players in position to do what they do best. And we're going to be multiple. We're going to change each and every week. We're going to be able to morph into whatever we need to play that week to be successful. And so I think he's one of the selfless defensive coordinators in the National Football League. He doesn't care if he gets the credit. And because of that, you see the players wearing the shirts, "In Spags We Trust," because they know that he's going to put them in a position to be successful, whether that's Chris Jones going from tackle to end, whether that's taking L'Jarius Sneed and playing him from outside to inside or back inside or blitzing him or whatever he's going to do. Steve Spagnuolo just does an outstanding job of making sure he thinks players first and less about scheme. Now, Mike, there's nothing wrong with the old 46 from the Chicago Bears. It was a great defense. I don't know if it could play in today's age and time, though.
Yeah, because we would have all our guys disqualified like 3 snaps into the game. I'm not sure Fensick and Hampton and Dent could get in the game long. Let's look at something, Booger, that Tony and I are really entertained by all week. And it's Nick Bosa saying of the Chiefs' offensive line, they hold a lot. We asked Jeff Saturday about that yesterday. And, of course, he gave us the offensive lineman's take on they hold a lot and said, well, yeah, but they hold a lot, too, on the defensive side. Let's hear a defensive lineman's take on that. What do you think of what Bosa said and sort of the back and forth of offensive line, defensive line?
Well, first of all, they're lesser athletes than we are. We're the better athletes. We're better looking. We get all the girls, all yada, yada, yada. So those guys are looked at. They're 6'5", 320 pounds. They're a little out of shape, a little overweight. So they have to do something to stop us from getting to their running back and their quarterback. Truth be told, guys, you could call holding every play in the National Football League because you're trying to stop tremendous athletes from going upfield, taking off, and they just put their helmet in these offensive linemen's chests and they're just bull rushing them over and over and over. So I don't envy being an offensive lineman. I was one in high school. At that point, I knew I would never be one going forward because I wanted to be the guy that was the hunter and not the guy that was the hunted. So, yeah, the offensive linemen hold, but the referees, I know they get a lot of flack. They've been doing a pretty good job of calling what I would call over the top, the holding penalties that are going to distract you or prevent you from making a play. But, yeah, those guys aren't good athletes. It's kind of like it would be like you and Tony trying to block me. The only way y'all could block me was one guy hold the left leg and the other guy hold the right leg. They call a penalty every play.
That's great.
We could not block you. There's not a chance in the world that we could block you ever. Let's get you out of here on this. We are now 4 days out. Which way are you leaning in this particular game?
You know, I'm always one to pick with my head, and I look at the analytics, but I'm going to throw that out of the way. I'm picking with my heart this time. John Lynch is a former teammate of mine. He and Kyle Shanahan, I've known him for years. Kyle used to sit on the floor in the back of our meeting room in Tampa when he was 21, 22 years old. He used to sit on the floor, guys, with his notebook, taking notes, trying to figure out how to call plays. You fast forward, here we are 20-something years later. I just want those guys to go out and finally feel what it's like to get that ring. Now, it's going to be a tall task to beat number 15. I think from an analytical standpoint, whichever defensive line can kind of put their will and imprint their will on this game, whether it's Chris Jones and the Kansas City Chiefs, or is it going to be Bosa and the 49ers, it's going to go a long way toward winning this game. But if you ask me to pick today, I'm going with the 49ers. I'm going to side with my old teammate and the little kid that used to sit on the floor in the back of our meeting rooms, Kyle Shanahan.
It's a great story.
Thank you so much, Booger. We're grateful for your presence every single week.
Absolutely, Booger. Thank you very much. And the 46 defense would terrorize the game today. You know that.
Enjoy it, guys.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, Tiger Woods announces when he'll play next.
And the Clippers are suddenly on top of the Western Conference in the NBA. But will they stay there?
The 46 defense, which most people think only has 10 people in it because it's called the 46, and they don't realize what it's named for,
We only need
would not
a 10.
terrorize anybody because there'd be flags on every play because they rough people all the time.
We might.
Happy time, people. Happy 74th birthday, Bert Hooton. The knuckle curveballer pitched 15 years in the bigs. The Dodgers, the Cubs, the Texas Rangers. Hooton's most productive years were with the Dodgers from 1975 to 1984. Over the course of his time with the Dodgers, Hooton got a chance to pitch alongside Don Sutton, Orel Hershiser, Fernando Valenzuela. In 1978, Hooton finished second to Gaylord Perry for the Cy Young after going 19-10 with a 2.71 ERA. His one All-Star game came in 1981. That's the year the Dodgers won the World Series over the Yankees. Hooton was the NLCS MVP, following no runs in 14 2/3 innings. In 33 postseason innings that year, Hooton allowed just 3 earned. He went 4-1 and he won the clinching game in the World Series. Lifetime Hooton was 151 and 136 with a 3.38 ERA.
All those Dodgers pitchers were great, Tony, but they weren't as great as Ferguson Jenkins. None of them. Who he pitched with, Hooton pitched with early in his career. In 1972, he had that no-hitter. On the second day of the season, like April 16, something like that, I was a kid. And I watched it. Every pitch was on a Sunday in Chicago and Wrigley. And Bert Hooton always stands out to me for that reason, giving me a no-hitter as a little kid. Pitched with, once again, Ferguson Arthur Jenkins.
Happy anniversary, Bruce Morris. On this day 39 years ago, the Marshall guard gathered a block shot to the left side of his basket and heaved it towards the other basket just ahead of the first half buzzer. It went in and was officially recognized as the longest shot ever made, measured at 89 feet 10 inches. College basketball adopted the three-point shot in 1986, so Morris's shot will always stand as the longest too. Marshall, being the thundering herd, calls this the shot heard round the world, H-E-R-D, herd. Marshall won this game over Appalachian State, 92-83, and to honor the shot, Marshall put Morris's footprints on the court.
Pretty cool. Tony, have you ever been to Marshall for either a football or basketball game? Because it's not a far drive from us in D.C.
I have not.
What is it, 3.5 hours, something like that, maybe? I've been. It's fascinating. Very cool place to be.
I missed Randy Moss. I should have gone. Happy trails to the Oilers' 16-game heater. I believe we had this, Mike. We said yesterday we thought Edmonton would have a real tough time tying the NHL's longest winning streak ever at 17 by beating Vegas in Vegas. We thought the 9-day layoff would cancel Edmonton's momentum. Indeed, Vegas won 3-1. Its final goal on an empty netter. The game was tied 1-1 through 2 periods. Then Chandler Stevenson got the go-ahead Vegas goal early in the third. Vegas goalie Aiden Hill stopped 30 shots, including a key one against Leon Draisaitl late in the third. It felt like a playoff game, Hill said. Vegas improved its home record to 19-5-2 this season. That's the second most home wins in the entire league.
Second most, Tony, and all the home ice advantages seem to be in the West. The great advantages, where Colorado has the best home record, or at least the greatest number of wins, and Vancouver's way up there too. Well, I mean, that's a long way from I-95. What's the excuse for all your teams along I-95? All those New York, Philly, Washington. Well, what's up?
I don't know that it has anything to do with I-95. I know this, that what we both said, it looked like you came to a full stop with a 9-day layoff. And if you came to a full stop and you're going into a tough arena against a tough team, you bet on the home team, right?
Yeah,
you bet on the home team in that
no
in any
big mo
sport.
going into there. That's right.
No, in any sport. So that's what we did. Why are you so obsessed with I-95? What is this inferiority you have about I-95?
Under your skin. Like annoying.
Let's go to the big finish. Tiger Woods says he'll be a playing host at next week's Genesis Invitational. You excited?
If you're around golf and you can see Tiger Woods, if he's just walking around saying hi to people, yes, I am excited. Jose Altuve agreed to a 5-year extension with the Stros. Is that significant?
Yeah, he's going to spend his whole career there, and he's a Hall of Famer. Regardless of Houston's cheating, he's a Hall of Famer. Andy Reid said Eric Bieniemy talked to the Chiefs offense prior to the AFC Championship game. What does that mean?
It means Bieniemy's out of work, which is really unthinkable. What the hell? There should be an investigation. Maybe you and I should do that. Put on our journalist hats like we used to be. NBA trade deadline is tomorrow. Are you expecting anything big?
I'm not, but you probably are. Last one. The
No,
Clippers go for their
I'm not.
fifth win in a row tonight. Do you like their chances?
I do. They're hosting the Pelicans. The Pelicans can beat anybody, but they're strangely up and down. Four-way tie at the top of the West. I'm going to take the Clips tonight to win against New Orleans.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. And I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knuckleheads. You can get the PTI.